One of the trickiest things I face as an artist is trying to stay motivated during big and complex projects. And the reason why I find it challenging is because all I want to do is tell my story and communicate my ideas in a clear and effective way. But the more I paint, the more things stack up, my layers increase, there's more materials to render. Oh, and the props. And don't forget about the characters. And you have to balance your values, right? And what kind of brush are you using? In this video, I'm going to be breaking things down and share with you 5 different methods for structuring big art projects and overcoming frustration. I'm coming from the point of view of an illustrator, but this still applies to whatever discipline you're in, whether that's animation, game dev, or 3D modeling. Oh, and before we begin, Wyatt has recently gotten an upgrade. Wyatt, come here.
Due to popular demand, Aris found some vocal receptors in Sherman Forest and has fitted me with one. So, hello.
Let's get into it.
Number 1. Have a clear focus.
When you're beginning your project, you're in the blue sky stage and anything is possible. Though what you're doing here really is limiting your focus. The more you're able to get a clearer idea of what it is you're even trying to accomplish in the first place, the easier it's going to be when you're actually creating. For me, I like to physically write down in words what it is I'm trying to convey, and that's usually some kind of emotion. I find this extremely helpful because once I have this figured out, it helps me narrow down the kinds of techniques I even consider in the first place. This includes the compositional choices I use, the color palette, and lighting. And for example, for my last illustration over here, named Lofies, I wrote down keywords like sunny, cozy, and warm. When I was planning my composition, I wanted to place my characters in the sun as a focal point, and also had an excuse to have a nice bright blue sky, but I could also make things feel cozier by kind of stacking all these different architectural elements on top of one another. So even though there was a lot to balance in this illustration, at each point during the process, I was able to take a step back and see if what I was doing was in service of these themes or going against them. If you're also aiming to be in the industry, this is also how most projects begin, like 99% of the time. It all begins with a brief and a simple idea.
Number 2. Find the right kinds of references and categorize them.
Okay, you've got your idea, now you need to solidify them by gathering references. And within any art discipline, gathering references is one of the most crucial steps. I remember reading a comment somewhere a while ago that said something along the lines of like, real artists don't use references. And that is one of the silliest things I've seen in a while. Art is interpretation and representation, and the only way to do that is by depicting things that we see or hear. In that sense, you also manage to capture a kind of truth in your art, and that's based on the references that you pick. When choosing your references, though, I highly recommend categorizing them so that you can use them with intention. Not all references are created equal. Where your job comes in is that you have to determine how these references are going to solve the different visual problems in your work. For me personally, I generally think of my references in 3 major categories. So number 1, what the thing is, which includes the subject, the materials, any kinds of, unique details that make it unique, things like that. Number 2, the lighting setup / time of day, which is really going to help influence your mood, and you can see how light reacts to certain surfaces. And number 3, the style. So this one here is generally what kind of style or art style that you're trying to emulate or artists that you look up to, and this helps to guide your process as you go about creating. I wouldn't recommend using too many though, only about 3 or 4, and kind of sticking fairly closely to that and kind of influencing things that you like as well. I personally use a program called PureRef to keep everything organized, and if you haven't heard of it, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. Also, another recommendation, but I like to check out FilmGrab for finding interesting movie stills and lighting. It's basically a free version of ShotDeck, and while it's not as versatile, it still gives you a great place to start.
While it's tempting, be careful not to choose too many references, as this can delay your process. Step 3. The block-in.
This next stage is going to change quite a bit depending on the specific field you're in, but it is crucial for not getting overwhelmed. Before getting lost in the small details of your project, which granted are important, it's better to first block in the major beats to have some kind of structure. In animation, this might be finishing your key poses for a scene. In game dev, it could be something like gray boxing a level, and in illustration, it's doing things like flats. I want you to think of this process as a kind of inverted triangle, and the more you move down, the tighter your focus becomes. In my case, for Lofies, I didn't start painting things like reflections and textures before blocking all of the objects in my scene. If I did, I'd be wasting a lot of time detailing things and splitting my attention. This stage does require some experience and discipline, but I find it gives you a much stronger base to work from. The good news is, if you want to practice your block in, you don't have to start large, complex projects each time. But you can get your reps in by also doing studies, which I highly recommend. You shouldn't be spending too much time on these, but you can just really focus on getting the base idea across. The studies are more about workflow than anything else. If you'd like to see a video on studies and how to structure them, leave a comment down below.
Tip 4. Put all of your energy and time at your focal point.
Now that you've got your block in, the next step is to spend most of your time and energy at your focal point, as in start there. In my case, I started detailing things closest to camera and left the background and side buildings for last. But on top of that, I spent lots of time painting my characters Aris and Wyatt and refining the poses before moving on to anything else. Since there's so much to balance like lighting, textures, colors, and rendering, focusing on my focal points keeps things clear and also reminds me of what I'm trying to accomplish. And generally, I'd recommend splitting your focus and energy in 3 different stages too. So number 1, areas with the most detail. Number 2, areas with the second most detail. And number 3, areas with the third most detail. But seriously, for illustration, this could mean things like foreground, middle ground, and background. For animation, it could be primary movements such as, body movements and poses, and then secondary like facial expressions. And then the last one, which could be background or side characters. And for 3D modeling, it could be primary, tertiary, and secondary forms. Even for music production, you might be looking at mixing certain instruments over the other depending on the song as well. By the way, can I get an F in chat for bass players? The truth is, we can spend so much time in this detailing / refining stage, but it's far more important to get something good enough and then move on. You don't want to spend too much time rendering something that ultimately isn't really going to make much of a difference. If you have time, then go back and add all those extra details. But speaking of time, I personally track how many hours I spend on each project. It helps me understand how long certain tasks take me so I can better plan for the future. I use an app called Toggle, which this video is not sponsored by, but you essentially clock in and out your hours whenever you want and organize them via project. To me, this is one of the biggest game changers of my workflow because now all of a sudden I knew when I should be taking breaks or when I should be working a little bit more, and it really helps to structure my day as well.
Longer art projects will also take many sessions to complete, so I recommend writing notes as you're continuing your journey. This will help you zoom out and look at the bigger picture and prioritize what details and tasks you need to get done. And finally, the last tip, stay organized.
And lastly, staying organized is one of the best ways to not become overwhelmed in bigger art projects. Though I know what you're thinking. It's hard to remember to stay organized when you're in a flow state, right? And yeah, I'd agree with you. When I'm painting and the layer count starts racking up, the last thing I'm really thinking about is making a big effort to name every single layer or organize things. I kind of just paint. And it's far too distracting to focus on things like that as well. So what I recommend is when I'm winding down for the day and I'm sort of organizing everything, I'll then go through and clean up my layers and name things and make them a little bit cleaner, just so that tomorrow's painting session is going to be a little bit easier. Like future Dan is going to thank you for all of the previous work. I also know in 3D modeling software like Blender, you can group meshes as well by collections and even join certain things together, which I very much recommend too. I don't know what the animation equivalent of cleaning or organizing your workflow would be, so if you have any idea, let me know in the comments down below.
And pro tip, if you press V in Photoshop to choose the selection tool, click on Auto Select, and anything you click on will automatically jump to that layer.
Before I wrap things up, I also want to share a final couple of tidbits with you. Being overwhelmed in art can be really frustrating and demotivating when you're not entirely sure what to do or what to improve. It can kind of feel impossible to reach the level of all of your favorite artists, but the truth is, they've all experienced this too. Art is problem solving and making thousands of creative decisions. Of course, this is not the only way to work, meaning all the stuff that I just detailed in this video, because sometimes the beauty of art can just be creating something without having any plans. But having some kind of structure for when and where to make those decisions is really, really handy. I'm also trying to get better at this myself, and while my final illustration here may look effortless, the truth is it took me about 60 hours and well over 500 layers. Do I want each painting to take this long? No, not really, but I use this as an opportunity to really learn and push myself as an artist. After I'm done with any big project, I also spend just a couple of minutes reflecting on sort of my workflow and what went really well and what could have been improved, just so I can continue refining my process. The better you get at understanding how you work and what you like, the easier it's going to be managing more complex and more challenging art projects in the future. With that being said, everybody, I'd love to know what you're working on, so leave a comment down below and let's all support each other. Thanks everyone for watching, and until next time, take care and stay safe.